Alrighty, hey guys, it's Ryan here with part 2 of this little perspective series. In this one we're going to be looking at 2-point perspective. In the last video we created this box here in 1-point perspective with a light source and a cast shadow. And our starting point for that box was with this face or plane. Now what we're going to do is slightly rotate this so that this face is slightly turned away from us. And now our starting point for a box in 2-point perspective is going to be an edge. So just to show you again here, we had our box positioned slightly to the left and below the horizon line before. Now what we're going to do is angle that box slightly while we're looking at it. So if we were to draw this first directly on the horizon line in front of us, and create a straight line here and draw a straight line for our front edge of the box. Okay, and I'm going to say that this point here and this point here is our 2 vanishing points, because when we rotate this we have 2 sets of lines leading away from us, okay, in opposite directions. So we're going to have 2 vanishing points. So like we did before, with 1-point perspective, we're going to connect the top of our edge with the vanishing points. And then to determine the sides, I'm just going to drop a vertical line. And in 2-point perspective, vertical lines, they're not moving away from us, and therefore remain perfectly vertical when we draw them. So now we've got our box in 2-point perspective directly in front of us on the horizon line. If you've got something like this positioned over the horizon line, you're not going to be able to see any of the top of it. You're not going to be able to see any of the bottom. But what if we did the same thing as we did here and drop it below the horizon line? So we're going to start again. I'm going to draw my horizon line. Set the ends here as my vanishing point. I'm going to say that this line here is the edge of our box. I'm going to connect the top and bottom of that edge to our vanishing point, and then drop vertical lines down for the ends of our box. Let's make this one a bit longer, so, and a bit straighter. Same thing here, connect your lines to the vanishing point. Do the same with the bottom so that you can see through your box. Drop a vertical line at the back there. Okay, so now we've got our box in 2-point perspective. I'm going to drop the opacity of this a little bit, and on a new layer draw this out neatly, being sure to close all of my lines. Like so. Okay, now I want to place this box on a flat plane. Okay, so I've created a new layer, and I want this flat plane, the edges of it, to run parallel to our box. So essentially our box would be perfectly placed in line with the edges of our page. So this time I'm starting at the vanishing point and running my lines through from there. So we're going to say that this here is our page. Okay, on a separate layer I'll draw it out. First I'll drop the opacity of this. Do the same thing like we did with the box, just outline the page itself. And now to make it stand out from the rest of the background and the box, I'm going to fill this in with white, making sure that with my paint bucket tool the target layer is set to active, like so. And now I'm going to bring my box layer up on top of that. Okay, now to give this a bit more form, I'm going to add a light source. So I'm going to say that our light is positioned right about here. With our 1-point perspective drawing, we brought the shadow forward, so the light source was placed a little bit further away from us. This time I'm going to bring it a little bit closer and we're going to cast a shadow back. So I'm going to drop a vertical line to about here. Well, let's make that straighter, like so. Now this is going to be the vanishing point for our shadows. And from here we're going to draw lines that run through the bottom corners of our box, just like we did in the 1-point perspective video. Make them quite long. And then our next step is to run lines from our light source. I'm going to start over here, just at the base of the circle, and drop lines through the top corners now of the box. And do that for all the corners. Okay, and where these lines intersect, this is pretty much going to be the corners of our shadow. So I'm going to drop the opacity of this, and it can start looking a bit busy, and it's easy to get confused with which intersection you're supposed to be using. The intersection is going to be with a line that runs through the corresponding top corner. So in this case, it's this one here. Okay, so I'm going to mark that out and do the same for the next corner. So over here, so it's through there, okay, let's put this line here, and the same for the back. And then we're going to connect the base of our box to those points, just connect the dots. And I'm going to fill that in to get our shadow. I'm going to drop this below our box again. And to further add form to our box, of course, we're not going to be able to see the shadow if it's a solid box. So this side facing a bit away from our light source, remember it's coming from over here. So most of our light is going to be falling on this plane here. This is still sort of in front, but the light source is quite high. It's not going to be getting as much light. And this other side is going to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to put a dark shape there. And there we have our box in 2-point perspective with a light source and a cast shadow. Now what you'll notice if you're standing in the street looking at a really tall box like a building, that the top of it looks a bit narrower than the base of it because it is much further away. And these sides seem to lean inward. And if we were to follow those lines, we'd find another vanishing point that they would meet at. Now we're dealing with 3-point perspective, and that's what I'm going to cover in the next video. So if you want to know how all that works, the next video we're going to do the same thing. Put a box in space in 3-point perspective, set up a light source, cast a shadow. Yeah, so I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one.